Every single budget you've ever made it worse. Not because you were lazy, not because life blindsided you, because the harder you gripped, the faster it slipped. And nobody has told you why, until now. You know that version of yourself, the one that sat down at the table, phone out, bank app open, genuinely ready this time. You assigned every dollar a job, groceries 300, subscriptions gone, coffee out 0, entertainment, a number so low it was practically a joke. It was airtight, it was serious, it was the cleanest budget you'd ever built. And then, maybe 11 days later, you were standing in a checkout line, watching yourself spend money you hadn't planned to spend, thinking, what is wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. But something is deeply wrong with the strategy. And it's something most budgeting advice never addresses, because the people teaching you how to budget don't understand what a budget actually triggers inside the oldest part of your brain. Here's the mechanism, the one that explains everything. Underneath the rational, goal-setting, spreadsheet-building version of you, there is another version, older, dramatically older. This version doesn't process saving for later. It doesn't understand the concept of a savings account, an emergency fund, or a retirement vehicle. It has been running the same operating system for roughly 200,000 years, and that system has exactly two modes: feast and famine. When resources arrive, feast. When resources are withheld, famine. That's the entire program. That's the whole thing. And here's where your budget becomes a trap. When you build a strict budget, when you cut, restrict, track every dollar, eliminate every non-essential expense, your survival brain doesn't receive the message, I'm being financially disciplined. It receives one message, famine is coming. The tighter the budget, the louder the alarm. And the louder the alarm, the more aggressively that ancient system drives you toward any available feast. Not next month when motivation runs out, not when willpower fades, now. The day after you made the budget. The morning after you deleted the food delivery app. The week after you opened the tracking spreadsheet. This is why more effort produces worse results. This is why you can try harder every month and end up in the same place every month. Your ancestors didn't have the option of saving a mammoth for later. The herd passed through. You consumed what you could, you stored what you could carry, and you moved. The brain that kept your species alive for 200 millennia built one hard rule. When resources are available, consume them now. When resources start disappearing, panic immediately. That brain is sitting inside your skull right now, running quietly in the background of every financial decision you make, and it does not care what century it is. This is why the people who try the hardest at budgeting, who track every cent, who cut everything, who build the most aggressive restrictions, frequently end up with the most catastrophic rebound patterns. It's not a willpower failure. It isn't a character flaw. It's a 200,000-year-old survival mechanism doing precisely what it was designed to do. And here's what makes this genuinely frustrating. The behaviors that feel the most responsible are, in many cases, the exact triggers. Stop, let that land for a second. The thing you thought was solving the problem is running the alarm. Extreme restriction, famine signal. Obsessive tracking of every dollar, famine signal. Eliminating all spending flexibility, every coffee, every $12 lunch, everything that isn't strictly essential, famine signal. Each of those executed with genuine effort, with real discipline, with actual sacrifice. Each one teaches your survival brain that resources are critically low. And a survival brain that believes resources are critically low doesn't wait for your conscious permission to do something about it. This isn't a metaphor. This is literal neurochemistry. The scarcity signal triggers the same limbic response whether you're actually facing starvation or you're staring at a spreadsheet that says 0 for leisure spending. Your brain cannot tell the difference between deprivation and restriction. It just reads the signal. So it does what it was built to do. It overrides the rational plan. It manufactures intense craving for resource acquisition. And then you're in that checkout line again, and the really painful part isn't the purchase. It's the confusion, because you tried. You actually tried this time. And then the shame arrives. That's the part that locks the cycle shut. Because shame doesn't sit still, it does something to the budget that makes the next one even more extreme. You feel like you failed, so you tighten the restrictions further, which sends a bigger famine signal, which generates a bigger rebound, which produces more shame, which produces harder restrictions, which triggers a bigger alarm. You're not failing to break a bad habit. You're caught in a feedback loop where the cure is amplifying the disease. The harder you apply the solution, the worse the problem gets. And if you've been living paycheck to paycheck despite genuine, consistent effort, this loop is almost certainly the thing running underneath it. If you are someone who has genuinely tried, who has built budget after budget, started over more times than you want to count, been labeled undisciplined by people who have never understood what you're actually fighting, hear this clearly. The effort was real, the intention was right, the mechanism was wrong the entire time. You were pressing harder on the accelerator while trying to brake, and the fact that you kept building new systems, kept starting over, kept trying again, that's not weakness. That's actually what makes this so brutal, because nothing about what you were doing was lazy. You were working harder and harder against a mechanism that doesn't respond to effort. It responds to signals. More intensity applied to the wrong signal is not discipline. It's just a faster path to the same destination. The exit from this trap isn't about trying harder. It isn't about finding better willpower or more motivation or a stricter system. It's about learning which behaviors send a feast signal to the primitive brain and designing your financial life entirely around those instead. This is the complete inversion of everything traditional budgeting teaches. Feast signals don't look disciplined. They look almost too easy, which is exactly why most people dismiss them before they have a chance to work. Small automated transfers your brain never consciously processes as loss. The money moves before your survival system even notices it's gone. No alarm, no rebound. The brain never experienced restriction, so it never generated the panic response. Designated spending windows, not unlimited, not zero, but scheduled and visible. Your brain sees that resources are accessible at a predictable time. The famine alarm stays quiet because the brain has evidence. Feast is coming. It's just not right this second. Regular small reward moments built intentionally into the system, not as treats for good behavior, but as neurological maintenance. A brain that receives consistent, small, predictable feast signals doesn't need to manufacture an emergency binge out of panic. The alarm was never triggered. None of these feel like the financial equivalent of heroic discipline. They feel almost suspiciously low effort. And that discomfort, that feeling of this can't possibly be enough, is the famine brain talking. Because the famine brain equates suffering with seriousness. It believes that if it doesn't feel like deprivation, it isn't working. That belief is the trap. The people who actually break the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle aren't the ones who out-discipline their own brains. They're the ones who stopped sending the famine signal. They built financial systems so smooth, so unobtrusive, so free of restriction panic that the survival brain stayed calm enough to let an actual plan run for more than 2 weeks. And in that calm, something extraordinary happened. The rational brain got to be in charge. Not just for a day, not just until motivation faded, but consistently, because the system was designed for human neurology, not against it. This isn't a motivation problem. It never was. It's a design problem, and design problems have design solutions. Here's the uncomfortable thing about everything you just heard. Every financial habit you have, the way money tends to disappear after payday, the way you spend more when you're stressed, the way you always feel almost caught up but never quite there, every one of those patterns has a famine signal at its root. a signal you've been accidentally amplifying every time you tried harder. Once you can read those signals, you start seeing them everywhere. In the way you budget, in the way you talk about money, in the strategies that keep failing despite the genuine effort behind them. The famine trap is one loop, but the loops run deep. And knowing how to design against them habit by habit, signal by signal, is exactly what this channel exists to show you.